to share screen.
Yeah, you have obviously started the recording.
Yeah, I have now started because I went out and in again, and I share the screen again. So
wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so let me first welcome everybody to the new year. Wish you a happy new year. And yeah, I think that's most important stuff I have to say. Then yeah, wonderful. Yeah, great.
Okay.
Okay, let's start. Yeah, you can.
Okay. So it's a more experimental talk today for several reasons. There were a lot of going on in the last week, and yeah, it was a little complicated, everything. And I also I presented the theory twice in this colloquium, and today I want to talk about how I actually developed the theory. I know that is not a that is more the context, or it would include both. Yeah, and it's a kind of backstage thing, so it includes the context of discovery and also the methodological problems of developing a theory. And it is about developing a theory from first principles. So this is a roadmap of the talk. What is a universal theory? How to develop a theory from first principle, system theory, and the cybernetic plot, because this is a background. And I found out that this is actually my background working on this talk. I was thinking about how I developed things, and I thought I just would think about some stuff, but I found out that I was very much into system theory, Luman, Kittler, and other things, and that I applied actually their ideas to evolution. And then the main idea of the backchannel theory, and then application of the theory and how people can join the project. Actually, we are now 4 people working on the theory, and we will integrate new people in spring. And yeah, this is nice not to. So first, the main idea. The main idea is that the main difference between chimpanzee societies and human societies is that absent, especially past actions of people are relevant for the social status. This is a very, so we always think about how our action will be perceived by others. And so the past actions are important for our status. And it's not only the dominance, which can be proven in the here and now. This is just the main idea. And then some criteria for universality. So the theory can explain all unique human cognitive capacities. It can also explain major mechanism that is found across all human cultures, and explains why social order is possible. And it can be applied to many different fields, and it can also be applied to itself, which is a criteria Luman always mentions when he talks about universal theories. So universality is very common in sociology, in communications theories, and so it's not a real something very special. It's just that you can, wherever communication is, you can treat this with a communication theory, for example. So it's not a very, it sounds greater than it is. It's a very simple. And here, I just wanted to explain what happens and how I planned it. So first, I developed the theory from first principle and not from literature. I know this is there are other possibilities to do so. And then I tried to publish just to claim the theory. I have it now published twice. one very early paper, which is not very good argued, back in 2015, and just in the spring, a version I can accept. And then you can list, if you develop the theory, then you can think about what actually you can explain, and then you can look for the fields where these phenomena are discussed, and then you develop the rhetorical justification adapted to the different fields. And of course, it's very good to integrate people from the respected field, from the fields, because you cannot read everything, and they are experts, and you just can provide it the idea. So I'm gonna skip this here. And yeah, one advantage is that the theory comes with a built-in proof. And this is that you only begin with one data point, and then it should produce an explanation for much more than you even thought of when you were developing it. But this can work or it can't work. I mean, it's not, there's no steps you can take that guarantee any success. So in most cases, this the method I suggest here will fail. This is the normal, but in some cases it will not. So from first principles, first, you need something you want to explain. This is obviously the research question. Then you need a basic principle and one data point. So you do not have very much empirical data. You have only one data point. Here we had, I had the research question, how did the human mind evolve? A basic principle, this was system theory, and one data point, that evolution is extraordinarily fast. This is the only data point. And of course, I mean, you only have this one data point, and so this be better right. And here you see, I mean, everybody knows maybe that human evolution is extraordinarily fast. We are very different in many regards to chimpanzees, but it's only 5 or 6 million years, brain growth. And there was a very interesting study by Bruce Luman, who said, to accomplish so much in so little evolutionary time, a few million of years, requires a selective process that is perhaps categorically different from the typical process that's acquiring new biological traits. So he found that the evolution of humans is about 14 times faster in some regions. It's a very, if you look at other regions, then it's different, but he looked at cognitive capacities and some genetic change, and it was very, very fast. And he again makes the same point. This is a little bit more literature on the extraordinary fast human evolution. And now comes the principle. So this is a cybernetic plot. I just will rush through it. I spent a lot of time with these people. It's all began with the Macy conferences, you might know. And these are my personal heroes of the cybernetic plot. I mainly read Luman very much and Kittler, and then went back to all the other literature. For me also, Heinz Neumann was very important. Yeah, so mainly I read Luman and of course Wiener and so on. But macro-sociological theories have a great similarity, and it's very interesting that the evolutionary biology also has a system approach, right? So the organisms adapt to a structure, to a structure and to a system, and the system is older than the organisms. So it's first. So this was a thing we skip, but here again, autopoietic systems not only create their structure, but also the elements. The elements do not only come together. Okay, so what system theory suggests is very simple. The extraordinary fast evolution is only possible with a positive feedback loop, right? And the human mind should be one element of the evolutionary system and part of the runaway process. So, of course, we can be a little bit more specific and not talk about the human mind, because we could be much more specific and name all the distinctive features. And this would be the proof that all these distinctive features are part of the feedback loop and then develop in a very fast. So here are some distinctive characteristics of human mind. And we could also, if you have a suggestion or something that we could put in, then we can test if it also would explain what you think is a distinctive characteristic of the human mind. So we have mental time traveling, language with syntax, storytelling, theory of mind, general intelligence, metacognition, moral agency, desire for recognition, social emotion, sensitive to values, social learning. Over-imitation is very important. So, yeah, is there any suggestions which are not there? Is there anything that you would think is a distinctive characteristic of the human mind and we could put on this list? Anyone, maybe? Yeah, just talk.
Maybe perceptual constancies.
What?
Constancy mechanisms in perception.
What is this?
That's a suggestion by Tyler Burch for representationality, and when he argues that representations are important for mental representations, and the characteristics are most important are constancy mechanisms, and it is that in perception we have these mechanisms to have distal content, that in order to see this cup as a cup and not only have proximal information about it, in order to separate this from other things during this week, or between space and time, etc., we need constancy mechanisms. And Tyler Burch argues that that's an important characteristic of the mental. So I thought that as an idea within the list, it might be important to add.
I'm not sure that if I understand it. I mean, if it's not the VLG thing of continuity.
1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this? I mean, we are talking about distinctive characteristics of the human mind.
Yeah.
I mean, if we are talking about perception or something like this, I mean, it appears to me that this constancy mechanism should be almost universal to higher intelligent beings, not only to the human mind. Adi.
Yeah, in the case of Tyler Burch, he separates between other representational systems and the human representation systems, because there are specific types of constancy mechanisms, but that's then a specific idea.
I mean, what we do.
But you are right. If we talk about perception in general, this applies to general.
That we construct, for example, persons would be maybe more unique to humans, but we will see.
I don't think we need a complete list of these. I mean, if you can show that your theory or your basic setup works for some of these characteristics, we would be very happy. So just go ahead.
Right. No, but it's only the point, of course, is that somebody else would name something and then it would explain it. This would be very convincing, of course. So we have the research question. How the distinctive features and as a principle, elements are produced by the systems. And yeah, we have this, So all distinctive features that are part of this feedback loop should be explained, and such runaway process could get started if one species is selected by itself. So now comes the very fishy part of the developing of a theory, which cannot be formalized, and it's just an idea, and this is why it is not a method to come to succeed always. But if you succeed, then you have the proof that we just spoke about. So the idea was that there are two very widely accepted selective pressure, which are also feedback loops, and this is sexual selection and the displacement between groups. And the idea was that these two feedback loops should be connected somehow. And I just thought about how could they be connected? And this would be the case if the choosing sex, mostly the female, would select quality in the chosen sex that are beneficial for the survival and proliferation of the group. Yeah, so we have the sexual selection as one feedback loop, and we have the displacement. And I thought, well, they could be, it was just an idea. How can they both be connected? And this, of course, would be the case if the qualities that are important for the displacement process would be targeted by sexual selection. So this is just an idea. There's no justification here, nothing. So here, again, you have an example. The example is just an example. If females would fall for war heroes, this would connect to, then you can look for evidence, or what is a good method is to formulate it in a broader way. So to formulate the ideal backchannel, and this would be that you translate the group beneficial behavior of an agent into reproduction of the genes of the agent. So here I just looked up for empirical evidence. At least there is a paper, historical and experimental evidence for sexual selection for war heroes. I also found some photos which were really cliche, and obviously this is not a very nice idea, but if we find an idea which is not very, which we do not sympathize very much with, then could be right. So here again, we can formulate it in an abstract way and find new examples. So it would work with all kind of social selection, yeah. And the things we just did are not anything that can be proven. It's just more or less how an idea works, and in most cases, this does not work. You can try this out in different ways, and very often you invent something that already exists, or it's just wrong because, yeah. So again, we have the distinctive characteristics, and here again the formulation of the perfect backchannel. The perfect backchannel is also the point to which the system would move due to the selection of the group level. I will explain this later. Yeah, it's an attractor. It's an attractor of the system. Maybe this is too abstract, yeah. But if there is a group, and the social selection would select the behavior that is beneficial for proliferation and for survival of the group, And then this group, of course, would displace all others. I just give a little example as a thought experiment. We have a group with people, with females, for example, who love long noses, and the other in good hunters, and probably the good hunter group would displace the long noses. So yeah, okay. Yeah, we have this principle, and here again we have an interesting quote from Luman, who suggests that the most abstract, the concept of on the most abstract level of such a theory should be a problem and a blank, which can be fulfilled by various functional equivalents. So the back channel, we cannot really point at anything. It's an abstract concept that can be filled in different ways. I think I have to go a little bit faster. This is the abstract formulation. Here there are two papers. One is the development, and this is the abstract one. I have to go a little bit faster. I'm sorry, because so we could do a generalization and go from this first idea with a sexual selection to all individuals, and the mating behavior change into how people talk about someone and how to behave in general. Then we have a more general back channel theory, and so pro-social behavior should be beneficial for the reproduction. And this could be formulated as a media problem. We need a technical medium that transmits the information of an absent action or an past action. And we need a mental mechanism that translates the information of the action into how people talk about and how to behave toward the agent. And this is what people really, this is, I think, our reality. We learn about a past action and we transform it into an image of an agent according to our values. Yeah? So we have two parts. We have the technical part, which is in our society mainly storytelling, but it could be videos, it's gossip, whatever. And then we have this psychological capacity, which is very special to humans, that we can translate the knowledge of a past action of an agent into an image of the agent according to the values of the society. And we think of this image as an essence of the person. So we believe that this is really what they are. And now these back channel now should explain all distinctive features. Again, the features, and here the three adaptations to the back channel. The first is how the actions are put under selective pressure when you can speak about them. The second is the adaptation to the technical part of the back channel. And the third is the social intelligence people develop because they live in a society where a back channel is implemented. So the actions have a very different dynamic when they develop in this situation, because it is again a runaway process, because people compete for action. So if you hunt for eating, then you just stay on a certain level, and evolution would not work further than it is needed. But if people would compete for being a good hunter, this is a kind of runaway process again. And so some capacities really develop, and this also has to do with social learning, and very much supervised learning is very often found in humans. And yeah, so there is a social reason to imitate, and this explains over imitation. And over-imitation is really important for cumulative culture. So yeah, but actually all the actions are maybe not so interesting, and maybe this is a not so interesting part. Then we have the adaptation to the back channel, so mainly storytelling. We can explain episodic memory, language, again, episodic memory, okay, maybe mental time traveling, theory of mind. If you are a good storyteller, you have to have a theory of mind, because you have to understand the whole story, which is what you know, and you have to put yourself in the shoes of a hero who only knows the story up to the point you told. So theory of mind is really important for storytelling, but it might be, of course, important for other things too. So storytelling is something very strange. You listen to a story and you cannot help to have imagination. If I say, well, Stalin was in Cuba and did some peyote and was whatever, and the moon was shining, you cannot help to imagine this. And then you can tell any story longer than you heard it, which is really, really strange. And you don't have the feeling that you invented anything. I mean, if stories should get shorter when be retold, because you cannot remember every word, but you can easily tell a story as long as you heard it, and you can even tell it longer. And why is this the case? Because we have imagination which are much richer than the actual words we hear. And when we retell the story, we do not remember the words, but our imagination when we heard the story, which is much richer. So this is quite a trick, and a lot of cognitive capacities developed for this trick. Then we have the adaptation. This is also very complex, that we can translate the knowledge of an action of an agent into an image. If we know somebody would be whatever, killed someone or whatever, did something to another person, or did something, saved the child from whatever, then we transform this knowledge of this action into the image of the person. And this translation process is done by the values of a society, and we are sensitive to the values of our society and in which we grew up. And we also need to calculate what is the cheapest way to obtain maximal reputation. Very often this is just done by having a career and getting really good at something. So then you have low costs in the performance, but you have you of course do the thing very well. So a very good strategy is to spend a lot of time in education and developing skills and so on. Then you can you do not need to put so much in it for get maximal reputation. So there the costs are more. So we go back to the original picture, and here the red things are the which is about storytelling, what we need for storytelling. Then we have the social learning imitation, and then here we have the social intelligent things. I put metacognition between them, and general intelligence to all fields. So these were just, I explained all this. So the main point of the methodology is that I only put in one data point, fast evolution, and then a principle, and then it produced a theory. I did not think about those things too much while developing it. And this allows the theory to move between contexts. We can do this in a context where we talk about collaboration, or about language evolution, how the whole thing gets started, over imitation, cultural transmission gets started. So it has a lot of different applications. So yeah, we are here now. So there are different fields one can apply it to, but this is not easy. This is I found now the solution to integrate people to develop an argument structure. I mean, you have to put it in an argument structure, right? And start then with the literature and solve the problem the literature proposes. And pragmatics is also very interesting, because in pragmatics, if you look at Grice or Searle, then it's always about instrumental reason. People want to know where the next gas station is and things like this. And all these Glauconian intelligence, which is the intelligence about the reputation of people, is not really considered there. Yeah, I'm done.
Okay.
So I have only some little pictures are here. Yeah, then a positive epistemology, and this is a team, and this is a sketch of the first backchannel theory. Bam.
That's it?
That's it. I have a lot of nice things, but I thought I should do a little bit more propaganda for I mean, this is yeah. Okay, I stop.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so thanks a lot. Yeah, we have time for questions. No question of understanding? Sabine, is this a question or is this just, okay, yeah, then go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, I already put the question in the channel, because in the beginning of the talk, you were talking about feedback loops, and then you switched to saying like backchannel theory. And I was just wondering, is this like a synonym, or does backchannel mean something else than feedback loop?
Feedback loop is a very general term which occurs in all kinds of systems. For example, if you have a coevolution of two organisms, then you very often have a feedback loop from, for example, prey and predator. And the backchannel is a very specific suggestion I make how this feedback loop would look in human societies. And this is that it has two elements. One element is a technical transmission over time and space, which is done, for example, by storytelling or trophy presentation or things like this. And then you have the translation, inner translation, the mental translation of the knowledge of an action into an image of a person. This I call the backchannel. It's a backchannel. I mean, yeah, I mean, this theory belongs to a kinds of theory which can be summarized under the term of equilibrium selection. Cultural group selection is also equilibrium selection, where you have different groups and they develop different equilibria, and one would then displace all others. But I put in this backchannel where they do not, the variations are not only randomly, but with a backchannel, they actually could develop in the direction which would help them to displace all others.
Okay, Ali?
Actually, I have a question of understanding. I wonder what the role and the status of the first principles are in your work. And I wonder whether they are principles in the first place. I didn't get what role.
What was the first principle? Well, I mean, I put in there a whole theory, and this is system theoretical thinking and the principle. I extract one principle, and this was that elements of a system are produced by the system. And this comes with of course, with the idea that what is real are the interactions between things, and that things only have a reality when they interact with anything. This is just the assumption of the cybernetic plot, that you don't look too much at the objects, but you only look, and you try to look mainly as the interactions. And then you would conclude that a very fast development would be a kind of feedback loop, that you have to have a feedback loop of the system, and that the human mind must be an element of this system.
Yeah, the motivation for the question was that why should we start with such principles? So principle is something different than something like a good guiding rule. I thought that it would be better to have something not infallible or categorically untouchable like principles, but rules that guide us in selecting appropriate explanations, right? So, and if you say that these are principles, this will restrict the domain of explanations, the kind of explanations you take to be appropriate for the explanandum. And I thought that this restrictive approach is inferior to an, I don't know, a more open approach in which you just select some rules that guide in selecting the explanations, but which are not infallible, right? That can be overridden later by new insights, etc. But in this way, to present the project at least I read it in a restrictive way.
Yeah, it could be have some more epistemic caution in the whole thing, but if you develop a theory, then it's just a bet on, I mean, I'm very sure about this principle. I mean, that I would to follow this principle, but I don't know what will happen, and if I have the right ideas, and then comes in an idea and stuff like this. So this is actually not a. I thought a long time about if I can present this, because it's has not the structure of a scientific talk, right? It's just a reconstruction of how something develops. So, as I already said, normally I did this many times with a lot of different things, and in most cases, you invent things that are already there, or you just have something completely off. So the idea is that you have this that you try it out. You take a principle and try it out, and then in doing so, you don't know what will happen. And when you succeed in a way, then something went right, but you do not. I mean, there's a big discussion how new ideas come around. So it's just, but I like to speak about it. And it came from the motivation because I work with other people on papers, and we talk a lot about things nobody talks about because it's about the methodology that is hidden in when you just read papers and discuss and so, because so how to work on a paper, how this, all the things that nobody really cares about, and so this was the idea, yeah.
Till, I mean, I have a question as well. I mean, you are talking so much about competition, but what I'm lacking is the competition of your theory with competing theories. So, I mean, what are the justification conditions for your own theory? I mean, you said at the beginning that, what was it? That it's a rhetorical justification. So I don't think, I mean, my understanding of theories is that the justification is fundamental. It's not just a rhetorical exercise that you do after you've got your theory, but it's just the other way around. You take other theories, possibly competing theories, or theories where you think there's something wrong, show what is wrong, and then show how that can be improved. But in your case, it seems to me that you have a complete, what should I say, complete uncomparable theory that has been developed by you, and it doesn't need any kind of justification against competing approaches, while your theory is about competition. I mean, that's
no, of course. I mean, this is just the argument. I mean, you, I know that you would start with a justification. My suggestion is not to start with a justification, but the justification must come. Otherwise, it's no science, right? I mean, if we don't have justification, we have fantasies around, nothing. So, I mean, I spent a lot of time. I first went into the evolutionary language field, and I, of course, compared there with other theories. And now we have a project to compare it with cultural group selection. And the two guys who developed it, they worked together for 50 years, Boyd and Richardson. And they're very friendly and answer to everything. And now we will have a paper, a collective written paper, and we will also send it before we will publish it. We will first send it to them that will really have their strongest version of the theory. So this competition is needed. Otherwise, it's just fantasy, right?
But what are the conditions of falsification for your own theory? I mean, as far as I can see, I mean,
if we would find a fundamental,
wait, what? I mean, one of the what should I say, commonly accepted distinctions between science and other kinds of storytelling is falsification. So a scientific theory can be falsified. So what are the conditions of falsification for your theory?
Very simple. Name one fundamental distinction between chimpanzee cognition and human cognition that cannot be explained by the theory. Okay?
Okay. I mean,
just name one.
That's, I mean, I'm talking about the methodological level, I'm not an expert on the details of your theory. But what I'm missing is a justification of your theory of competition. I mean, your theory is talking about competition all the time, but it's not talking about the competition between your theory and other theories. So what get the other theories wrong? I mean, you can tell all kinds of stories where you can put together some facts and provide an explanation, but the hardcore, what should I say, hardcore value in science is that your explanation is better than a competing explanation. I see no competing explanation in your theory.
Yeah, this is the first part of it, and I will never get this published, what I said today. I only get published things when I compare it with the literature of any field.
Right, yeah.
So I have to, but it would be interesting to go into different fields. And now I found that it is so complicated that it's very nice to integrate people which are experts in the field for the paper. And this is a very good strategy because they are the experts of the literature. And we can formulate an argument, a classical justification, beginning with the literature, with a problem, and how this theory develops it, solves it. But what I want to argue for is that if you start too early with literature and if you start too early with argumentation, it will be you will not have a theory that can be applied to different fields.
But I mean, that's the last word I'm saying. I mean, one of the essential features of science is that you try to learn as much as possible from other experts, and then try to do something or invent something or create something that prevents some of their mistakes. But in your case, it seems to be that you develop something, and after you've developed you've developed it, then you look for some competition. But
right.
in science, I mean that okay, yeah, but that is something that may work in art, but I don't think it works in science, because there are other clever people around who have good ideas, and the best and the most economic method is to put together all these ideas and then show what can be done better. But you develop something completely of your own.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bit like Schopenhauer. He also invented everything from the scratch. And I'm a bit
Hegel or Darwin or
Hegel, not so much. Hegel started with Kant. I mean, maybe he doesn't tell, but that's
okay. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, no, I know. It's actually a method in art. So I did my first radio play, and I said, well, I will not listen to any radio plays. I will never hear any, and just develop the whole thing again. And I won the German Hörspielpreis with exactly this one, because I never listened to any before. Right.
I mean, that's my suspicion. But I mean, that may work in the arts, that may particularly work in literature and theater play. But I mean, science is to some extent a collective effort. And there are other clever, even if you are more clever than everybody else, what other people have said may help you to prevent some of the most problematic failures. And it's sometimes a good idea to make use of the tools other people have developed, or maybe the ideas.
Yeah, maybe I did, and I didn't. Before I did this talk, I didn't really realize that I was so deeply influenced by all the Luman and Kittler stuff, and that the theory very much depend on their methodology. But I mean, we can formulate it as a bet, right? I mean, if I can produce let's say 5 to 10 papers a year with a team which will be published in some journals, maybe this will be a kind of justification. So right.
I mean, the justification condition for scientific justifications condition is not success. Scientific justification is a rational affair, showing that your arguments are better than other arguments. And one condition of being able to do so is reading the other stuff and then showing that your stuff is better than, and maybe even take advantage of it, because there are some people around who are not completely stupid, and it may be worthwhile to read their stuff.
I read very many competitions. For example, I spent a whole year on the cultural group selection literature. But after I developed it and saw that there might be something similar to it, it's just the order, and we will see if. Okay. I mean, it's also very exhausting to work like this, because you work alone and you go in completely wrong directions for months. For you put so much work in ideas and little things go wrong. That you just lose a year or so.
That can happen, yeah. Okay, we have some other Matthias, and then I think Sabine, and then Ali.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. I was wondering, I had two questions mainly. So one was how far you think the theory is away from any kind of model? Because for me, oftentimes when we are talking about explanations and so forth, it's all a little wishy-washy. I mean, that's not a bad thing, right? Many theories are like so, or start like so, or research projects start like so. But how far do you think are you away from having a proper predictive model or something of that kind?
I'm not. You mean a predictive model? Yeah. Well, very, very. I mean, it is clear, for example, that there are some escalations going on, but it's not very specific. I mean, for example, that war culture would improve over history is a prediction, but it's so obvious that you do not need to. So the escalation things so we could look at certain points. Yeah, I mean, if we go back and have some fossils, then of course, yeah, but this already is done with the development of the distinctive traits. Of course, they develop. Maybe we can reconstruct what we can do, what I already did, construct the order how the development could start and then develop. And this would predict which cognitive feature would develop first and which would develop later. If there is any fossil evidence of anything there, this could be tested. I always write down empirical studies that would address the predictions. Yeah, but this, of course, this would be interesting to see what are the. So it's a little bit similar question than Michael said, right? What are the success conditions? Yeah, so I think the real science can only begin when you apply it to a field that already exists, and this was not the part of my talk, right? So I was somehow successful in the evolutionary language discourse, which are conferences, and I presented my ideas there 5 times or so. And now I move to more about the cooperation literature, which is huge and interesting. And it's more interesting because it's more focused on modeling. So they understand these models much better. Yeah, I don't know if I could answer anything of your questions, but you had another question, right?
Yeah, the other question was that it's more specific, that I wasn't quite clear on how precisely the backchannel theory handles. So why it's supposed to explain that it's faster, right? So you explain it through a kind of loop, feedback loop, right? That there's a feedback loop between social mechanisms, let's say, and genes, or something like that. If I got it right, if I didn't, you have to correct me. But that there's a feedback loop between those 2 elements. But I wasn't necessarily all too sure why that's supposed to explain that everything went so fast, right? Because you can have long feedback loops, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, just because there's a feedback loop doesn't mean that it has to be particularly fast or something like that, in my mind, at least.
Well, systems have negative feedback loops, which are essential, which is just the system itself and is the stability of the system. No system can exist without negative feedback loops, which are just regulations, right? So if you have a system that develops, and then you have to have a positive feedback loop, which are very often deadly. I mean, you have deadly feedback loops if they're going too fast. Yeah, and we are in this feedback loop, I mean, with technology, obviously. And this is, I mean, it explains why technology still develops even when everybody would have enough to eat, which is not the case. But if we would come to the place, then we would not stop, right? Because it's about recognition, it's about reputation, it's about competition, and this would predict that this would go on forever. And feedback loops, positive feedback loops, are always a high risk for systems to collapse. Feedback loop, normally you do not want to have too strong feedback loops, positive feedback loops. They escalate and destroy the system very often. Yep.
Okay, Sabine?
So, sorry. So what I understood was that you have like 2 systems you look at. That one system is the like society, and the other is like the system of the mind. Is that right?
No.
Or is it like one system?
So the 2 systems are selections. The one selection is the selection within a group, where different individuals are adapting to the equilibrium of this group, which is this feedback loop, and then you have the selection on the group level. So we talk about traditional small-scale societies, right? We do not talk about empires or so. So you have little groups, and so one group can displace others, and this means that the mechanisms that produce a certain equilibrium in one group that has the ability to displace others would then spread through the habitat by displacement of other groups.
So then the theory is just about like groups and societies.
It's about it's not about societies, it's not about the groups, it's just about the selection between the group. Groups are very complex, societies are very complex. This complexity is not part of the theory. The theory just says there are different groups and they compete for proliferation. This is not a and then we have some insights how this would happen, but it's not about it's not a describing a social group or a society, which would be much too complex for such a system. Only the aspect of that there are selective processes. I looked at this when the very beginning for very, very long time and found that you find, if you look at the male germline and the female germline, then you have, when you see expansions, then you have then the male germline will get only one line will get very, very dominant, and then you have all the different female lines still in place, which suggests that females are integrated in expansions and males much less, but maybe they have just less reproductive success when a new group came in because they do not have the culture. This can also happen. But there's a lot of proof of displacement from one group of another humans of others. Yeah, there's a whole books, a whole library on displacement before civilization. It's not about the civilization replacing each other.
Okay, then to me it seems a little confusing to take like selective processes and to talk about system theory, because like the system can either be like a psychological system or like a system between psychological and between individual psyches, and one mechanism would be a part of one of those systems, or like the relationship between like the psychological and the group system. But yeah, I'm a little, all my questions are about the words you use. I'm a little confused about what exactly you're trying to explain and where is this like built into systems theory. Like I also read Luman and I expected you to say something about like either the psychic system or the societal system, and I feel like it's somehow in between, and that's kind of confusing for me.
Okay, for just reference to Luman, I mean the systems of Luman operate in the media of Sinn, sense, right? Sinn, not translatable. It's not meaning. It's a binary distinction, and you have this differentiation process in different functional systems, and this is just an inspiration. And I went back very much to the cybernetic literature and thinking about took mostly the idea that the objects of a system are produced by the system. So this is the Luman reference. It's not a system theory in sense of Luman. It's just this one quote I took, and this can be true for evolutionary theory and also for the theory of institutions. For example, institutions develop like this. But Luhmann's system theory operates in the media of Sinn, and you have this modern society, the out-differentiation. I mean, So it would be confusing if you would understand system theory here in complete reference to Luhmann, which I should point out, because
then that would be that was helpful, and that would be my feedback then maybe for another presentation you do. If you say like if you refer to someone, like make it more explicit, because everyone has their own association with them, and I thought of something very different. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, system theory is much more broad, but the sociological system theory is Luhmann, and you have also the Talcott-Parson thing. And I should explain that I use the term in a very broad way, right? Very good, thank you.
Ali?
Yeah, I have 2 points. The first one is also methodological, the same as Michael said, and it's a suggestion of how to approach this, namely, maybe you consider alternative theories and check whether first they actually address the same explanandum. This might look always in the first glance in this way, but actually most of them address specific parts of an explanandum, and in this sense they are not always comparable. And the second is then to collect just objections to these theories. What are they lacking, what they can't explain, and then look at these lacking parts as challenges that your theory aims and tries to solve without having the same problems, right? So that's the first methodological part, and I think that's a straightforward approach. You just do science in this way. You don't have to tell a different story, etc. And the second part is that I think there is some inconsistency in the approach of your theory. At least it seems to me that way, because you presuppose that there is something like the human mind as a unifying thing, and the characteristic we associate with the human mind can be explained by a general thing, by a general explanation, right? And it should be something that separates then the human mind from other things, like the mind of other living beings. And given that the human mind is so complex and evolved due to natural selection, etc., wouldn't it be more natural to address these characteristics by themselves separately and provide explanations, and without presupposing that they can be unified or reduced to a general explanation, but these explanations just stay at their own in a disjunctive way, because it's more natural to think that one explanation might be good enough to cover all the aspects of mental imagery, but not compatible or reducible to another level together with an explanation of, I don't know, episodic memory. Mm-hmm. This might be the case, and it is then nothing, even if metaphysically they are based on this, they are part of the same system, etc. Our knowledge of it is limited in some way, and this then just to accept it. And it's also more natural, I think, to start this way rather than starting with principles or formulating restrictions in saying that they have to be covered by a general explanation, all with the same quality. And it seems that you're taking this way rather than what I take to be more natural, namely that they are just distinct, they evolve during time due to circumstances, and they have their own explanations. Yeah, without presupposing that there is something like the human mind in general that covers everything together.
Yeah, this was just the beginning of my idea, that I wanted to explain what is distinctive and special about the human mind. And then, of course, if you think about it, then you have to look at different qualities. So your two questions were kind of connected, I think, or can be connected. You said that I should compare it with other theories, and you said, well, don't explain the whole mind, but one specific things, and they are completely connected, because there might be literature and contexts where they talk about a special, unique quality of the human mind, and this is a literature to it, and I can apply this theory to it, and that it works universally will only be proven when I can do this in 5 completely different fields, right? Then it's hard maybe to deny that there is something more. Yeah. So this is why my new paper is under review in a biological journal, and I will try to with this collaborative group to go in different fields to make this point. But each scientific argumentation must be addressed to a certain field, a certain literature, and can only explain the thing they want to explain. I mean, maybe you can write in the conclusion, oh, yeah, nice, you can explain language evolution with this, but maybe also cooperation. But this is obviously not part of the argument in the paper. So this is all, yeah.
Yeah. Ali?
Yeah, I don't know whether there was a misunderstanding of, I mean, with unifying, I meant unifying all mental capacities or characteristics by one explanation. And it seemed to me that your approach is going this way. My suggestion was not to bring different scientific fields together with publications, but just to address these characteristics by themselves and try to explain them without presupposing that they have to be connectable or reducible to another level that is also the same level in which other capacities can be reduced to in the same way. Okay. And presupposing this is really restrictive and I think not appropriate for a system that is complex in this way.
Okay, so, here's the argument is the following. We talk about the distinctive qualities of the human mind, so which are really developed very fast and produced huge differences between humans and chimpanzees. And these qualities, this characteristic must be part of a positive feedback loop. This could be different feedback loops. This could be one feedback loop. So I tried out with one feedback loops. And when I'm it could be just completely, it could be 2 or 3 or 4. But first we try one, and if I can explain all of them, or if the theory, then it seems to be rather central. So everything is, they are not connected in the sense that they must have to do anything with each other, but the distance, the genetic distance between humans and chimpanzees concerning these characteristics suggest that they are part of the positive feedback loop. And this does not mean that they are connected to each other. They're just part of the feedback loop. So you need episodic memory to talk about someone who is past actions. You need language and you need syntax, and language could be, because then you can talk about absent stuff. And therefore, for this, you need syntax, because only with syntax you can communicate propositions. And you need propositions to talk about. And then you have other aspects, of course, there's truth value and stuff like this. Yeah, they are not connected to each other. They just must be part of a positive feedback loop, because otherwise they would not develop fast.
Yeah, I mean, I still have the same, so maybe I try to motivate it in a slightly different way. I mean, your theory, your entire theory is about competition, but competition between different groups and also between different individuals. But it's strange for me that your theory does not compete or does not develop its own explanations in competition with other theories. I mean, it's obvious that you can develop all kinds of explanations for all kinds of developments. But I mean, the gold standard for the quality of an explanation is that it competes with and shows in this competition, shows it's better than other theories. I mean, we don't have eternal truth. The only gold standard we have is competing with other theories, and that's something, as in the way that you've described it, you said, well, I'm developing a theory and then I compare it with other theories. But I mean, that prevents you from learning from other theories and then being better than those other theories in some areas. But you seem to do it the other way around. You first develop your own theory and then try to show that it's better than the other theories. But that is something that may work in art, but I don't think it works in science. At least it's a very what should I say, problematic, and maybe requires a problematic process and requires a lot of effort.
It needs you waste a lot of time by it.
Yeah, right. Matthias.
Yeah, so also I think in relation to what Ali just said, I feel, I mean, there's obviously an advantage if we have if we explain more with the least amount of kind of postulates or something like that, right? If you have a kind of theory that can explain everything, right? That would be kind of cool. But the danger, of course, is a kind of frictionless spinning where you just kind of move by yourself, have your own theory that can explain everything. But explanations are usually quite cheap, right? So I think that I'm just repeating more or less what Michael just said, but that's kind of also my worry. Yeah.
Why are explanations cheap?
I mean, so in my mind, right, that my mind simply is that they're simply underdetermined, right? You can have multiple explanations for the same data points.
Right.
And
the gold standard is competition between different explanations for economy and range of what they can explain. And that is something that and it's difficult to say. I mean, it's also from your own point of view. I mean, you need this kind of competition because we don't have, I mean, in 200 or 300 years ago, you had internal truth. We don't have that anymore. I mean, the only replacement for internal truth that we have is competition. But if you don't start with competition from the scratch, then it's difficult to start it when you've already. I think it has to be built into the theory. Not only, and you seem to bring it back. You develop a perfect theory and then show that it's better than the other one. But it's not only showing that it is. You should make use of the cleverness of other players in the field from early on. That's more economic.
It can be. There are a lot of theories, I believe, that are very interesting, and they can be very good implemented into it. So it's completely. As a cultural group selection can be completely accepted. It's just a different time. You have I work on something where you can have the ideas von Durkheim, Weber. There are a lot of the hunting hypothesis.
I mean something completely different.
A lot of theories that can be integrated, and
but I'm not about the theories that you can integrate. You can learn most of the theories that you cannot integrate. That's the competition. And that's the competition. And the funny thing about your theories is that you are describing competition, but you don't compete yourself.
I will.
Okay.
And I did in my papers. I mean, if you read my papers, then you see.
I know. But I mean, it has to be built in the process of development of the theory.
Yeah, I don't.
That's one of the difference between art and science.
Yeah, this is maybe a point where science can learn from art.
I'm not so sure. I mean, many scientists think.
But we will see, okay? We will see.
I mean, the funny thing about those scientists is, I mean, it's not that they think they can learn from art. I mean, what they translate into the other scientists can learn from me. And I think in science, that works in some way in art, particularly to some extent in what in Germany is called Regietheater. But I don't think it works in science. I mean, there are other clever people around.
Okay, I mean, we disagree on the point in which order we should do something.
Right.
And it's a very wasteful unsecure process. You start a lot of projects, you start a lot of ideas, which just do not work because they are just, you then look at the literature and you see, oh, this has been done better, this is already there, oh, this is completely mistaken because I didn't know that this is like this. Oh, yeah. But in some cases, when you confront it with the literature, then it works, and nobody can really. There's, yeah. So this is the. I completely agreed with for example, with Kittler on this method, where you say, well, no wonder. Nobody should wonder.
Well, let's talk about Kittler. I mean, we might disagree about it, but we had one discussion, and then he left
He's the last great hero.
Okay, yeah, we had one discussion in quite some years ago in Darmstadt, I think, and he left the stage.
Oh, was he bored?
No, not that wasn't obviously not the reason. But I mean, that's not important. Okay, yeah, other questions? Yeah, Toward.
Yeah, can you tell a bit more on, if we have no other questions, and in the five minutes we have, more on the time scales issue you just mentioned it, and if I'm to give any feedback, it was the presentation in general was a bit fast for me at least. So you went on fast through this. You mentioned and write on the slides, I guess, 3 time scales. I mean, this is something I'm very interested in is regarding what distinguishes human mode of cognition, and does this different but nested time scales issue, how does this relate to the evolutionary pace? You know, the evolutionary pace is just one measure, and the different time scales can affect that on different sorts and so on. How do these relate, or just tell a bit more?
So in evolutionary theory, behavior is always first. So something is used for a new purpose. So behavior is first, and then the genes follows in complex organisms, not in bacteria. But these 3 time scales were the evolutionary time, then the ontogenetic time, and then that we can adapt in situation. So let's just simplify it to having optimized optimize the reputation. Then you this puts some selective pressure, and this develops. So the ability to understand your own reputation, and you understand the moral values, and this is an evolutionary thing. But you also learn, and this is of course very crucial, on the ontogenetic level, you learn skills which give you a good reputation. You understand the values, and so on. And of course, you also can think about what to do if you have this kind of you have economic games. Then you can think about it, and with a slow system, then you can reflect what would be good to do. Do I do this, or maybe I get a bad reputation? So we have the adaptation on the 3 levels. They're much better experts than I am on the ontogenetic level. It's extremely interesting. Can be a lot of, there's a interesting, Tomasello wrote a whole book on it. This is, maybe there could be some suggestions for research papers there, but yeah, this is, I'm not an expert on it. Decision making is also a huge field. I'm very much try to concentrate on the evolutionary thing, and if we see the brain growth as a kind of escalation, then it would suggest, it would be an idea to the starting condition that's very important. the starting conditions is why do humans develop like this and chimpanzees do not? And the answer is given by Richardson and Boyd, that anything, quoting Darwin said, you need 3 conditions for anything to become an object of selection or adaptation by natural selection. There must be variation, there must be selection, and there must be heredity, and that this does not work when you have too much migration. You have intermating between groups, so you have to have an isolation of production. And the idea is there that in East Africa you have a climate change, and our ancestors lived in gallery forests and quite isolated, and so you do not have so much migration. And this is a starting point. The starting point is that you have groups that are separate from each other, and and this is well explained in my last paper. But these are it's very crucial, the starting condition for the whole thing, because we are different to chimpanzees. And why didn't chimpanzees develop like this? Well, because they have intermating between groups, and so the group cannot become an object of selection, because they mate with males from other groups, even if these males would get killed when found in the territory. But this is possible in the forest, and it's not possible if groups live in gallery forests and you have savanna between them. And so these are the conditions. I have a very crazy idea about when this started. I think it would be about 10 million years ago, and it dances around this. So there could be groups that begin with this selection, and they get lost again and begin again, and this would then should suggest that chimpanzees and gorillas, even gorillas, would split off later. So they fall back in the old patterns. And there are some evidence for this, because the knuckle walk is developed different separately in chimpanzees, and our ancestors didn't walk on knuckles. And this is a good technique if you have too short hands from working upside, and also you have upright hominini earlier than the split, which is also the strongest argument. So it's very early. I believe it's very, very early. But in all this complex transitions, they can get lost. They develop in some place, and then you find this also in technology. So you find a group which uses bones in a very specific, interesting way, and they exist for 2,000 years, and then it's gone again. So this is not a straightforward development.
All right,
Okay.
thanks. I guess we have to quit now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah.